All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here this morning. We got a lot to cover this morning, updates on what's happening with the flood. I want to first start by highlighting something very important in that, there's not been any loss of life in this event. There's not been any substantial injuries in this event. We've had a lot of rescues, so I think we sometimes get lost in property and roads and things like that, but human life is always what's most important. So that's a real great thing that we can't lose in this whole discussion. We're busy helping taking care of folks right now, and that's been a priority for us, is making sure people are out of their homes, making sure that we're setting up the right resources for people who have been affected by this. And two things have really bubbled up in the last 24 hours. One is people's desire to help. We have people coming out of the woodwork who want to help right now. And the second thing that's bubbled up is people's desire to give. They want to give not only of their time, but of resources and of finances. So to address those two things, we've set up two different scenarios. First is people who want to volunteer and want to help, whether that's as simple as helping someone move furniture out of their basement, or as complicated as you're a sheetrock person and you want to help a homeowner. You can call the 211, the Helpline Center. We have been working with the staff there to set up a process to coordinate that. So if you have a need as a homeowner or as a citizen in the community, please contact 211. And if you're an individual in the community who wants to help, let me say we need your help. We would rely on your help, and we would ask you to contact 211 as well. And to do that, you dial 211. That's why we call it the 211 helpline. It's as simple as that. Dial 211, tell them what you need or what resources you have to assist with, and they'll connect you. So that's the great thing about Sioux Falls right now, is we rally together for things like this. I mean, we talk about One Sioux Falls and working together, and I'm seeing that on full display right now, which has been very, very encouraging. Second thing is we also have people who they don't maybe have time, but they want to give financially. They want to help. They want to help with affected homeowners with, things they need, insurance deductibles, things not covered by insurance, things like that. And so we've worked with the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation to set up a fund for that. So you can contact, or you can go to their website's probably the easiest way to get there, sfacf.org. That's Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, sfacf.org. And right on the main page, there is a link to what we're calling the Flood Recovery Fund. And so you'll be able to give dollars to the Flood Recovery Fund, and then there's a process that the foundation uses to disseminate those funds to people who apply and show the need that they have. So two important ways that you can give back right now, Sioux Falls. If you're like me and haven't been dramatically affected on your home, you feel helpless. You really want to get out and help people. So those are the two big ways right now. So the other thing I'll say is we have groups of people, scout groups, youth groups, churches that want to help out with some of the efforts. Same thing, organize and mobilize your group, and then contact the 211 helpline. Say, hey, we got 40 people that are ready to step up and help. And so very important that we work through them to have a centralized point for all that volunteer efforts. I want to specifically also call out the city staff. I've been trying to do this as much as I can, but I can't stress enough the amazing response that our city staff has done to this incident. Specifically, our street and public works crews have been tremendous, and they have already been burning the candle hard for the last 7 or 8 weeks with the weather we've had, and this has just compounded things dramatically. So we need to thank them. If you see them, thank them. They are doing a tremendous job with the response here right now. So we're a strong community. We're going to get through this together. Sioux Falls is tough, and we band together for each other in times of need, and so I'm very proud to see that. So thanks for your help along the way, and I'm going to turn over to Mark Cotter. Mark's going to get into some of the specifics about what we're seeing with the roads, with our wastewater levels, and some of the instances with our infrastructure. So, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Well, there's two words I want to say today the sun is shining, and we're starting to see some dry pavement. So sunshine and dry, that's good news all the way around. Yeah, there's a number of things to cover, so let me just hit some highlights, and then we can get you positioned at the end of this to answer some questions. So the status of the roadways regarding closures is constantly changing, and so again, we really encourage people to go to the city website. Yesterday we had so many hits it actually overwhelmed this website for a short time and actually took it down. So that's a great sign that people are actually going to the website. Continue to do that. Overnight we were successful that we could open 26th Street over by Cliff Avenue Greenhouse, South Minnesota, that area under 229, and then 41st Street over by the mall. Today we're going to work really hard to try to get Louise Avenue open in front of the mall, and as well as West 12th Street. Those two conduits are significant for our in-town users and our daily commuters, and just know that we're really concentrating on those two next as we organize our pumping operations. If you see something change regarding some localized flooding, you'd like to let us know, please call the police department's emergent number, or if you see large debris. There's a lot of debris that moves out of some of our treat areas, and we want to make sure that if you see some of that, call us 367-7000. We'll address it accordingly. Water reclamation. So really want to thank the residents that have reduced their water usage. Anything helped. Our water rec flows for our wastewater system are recovering nicely, and we would expect by the end of today, you could resume normal water usage. The plant flows have recovered though nicely and continue to go down, and we also have all of our wastewater lift stations operating, which is key. One of the most important things we did last night, we had about 40 individuals sandbag around our main lift station, and that's fortified. We're going to leave that in place through the spring melt to make sure that if this were to happen again, we'd already have those steps already in place. We've got 4 pumping locations going right now to again remove some of that localized flooding, and as those areas begin to catch up, say we go from 4 to 3, we'll move pumps from 1 to the X, and we'll start to accelerate how we move this water and actually get it into the river channel. In general, this has been a really good test of the new levee system. That levee system's been a cooperative effort between the state of South Dakota and the Army Corps of Engineers, where it was raised 5 feet in areas. It tested it within a couple of feet yesterday. Also raising of the 41st Street Bridge, when that got raised almost 7 feet. Just a significant prior infrastructure investments that really positions the city for significant high flow events like this. To date, we've had 7 confirmed wastewater backups, so we're working with those homeowners to make sure that they can get anything out of their basements if it was affected. And again, if you believe you've had any impact like that, call 367-8198, and we'll come out and see and talk through that with you. Sump pumps, again, we are going to go through a pretty extensive dewatering of our ground here, and so I would expect people are going to see high flows coming into their sump pump systems for weeks to come. And so again, just to really emphasize to discharge those discharge pipes, probably best at this point, just pull them around to your driveway surface so it runs down a hard surface, down into the street, and then we'll get into the sump pump system. Last night we issued a press release. We want to make sure that we provide some direction regarding landfill fees for not only the City of Sioux Falls residents, but it's a 5-county landfill, it's a regional landfill. We know not only Sioux Falls was affected by this, and so if you've got debris that has accumulated or was impacted from this event, for the next 2 weeks, you'll see that press release that there'll be no charge at the landfill unless you have a significant load that's detailed in the press release. But most things will come out in pickups and small trailers, and it really allows get the health and safety items out of your house. Maybe there's furniture that got impacted that you want to dispose of. We want to make sure we remove any of the stress or the cost of disposing that when you get to landfill. And then last thing, on the normal update, with the high winds last night, we had a traffic signal get blown down near the intersection of Louise and Madison. Teams went out there and got that intersection restored. And so just a constant reminder, when we have high winds, you have street lights, you have a number of things that are in the public's right-of-way that are hazards, and so just always be very, very conscious. And the thing I want to end on today is now as we start to see the sunshine come out and dry pavement, we're going to be able to really ramp up our normal spring pothole repair approach. And so I just want to give you some perspective of what our operational approach will be for at least the next 3 weeks as we make a significant impact on our roadway system. So Monday through Friday, daytime operations will have a minimum of 6 crews running citywide. Monday through Friday, nighttime operations will have a minimum of 1 crew working in some of those high traffic areas of town. They could be in an area on Minnesota Avenue, they could be in an intersection like 57th and Louise. So know that we'll have daytime and nighttime operations going Monday through Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday, we'll have a minimum of 3 crews addressing potholes during the daytime hours. And again, to really put a lot of emphasis on this and make substantial progress over the course of the next 3 weeks. And we'll adjust that after that accordingly. So those are my updates today. If you do have a pothole request, either use the city's new OneLink app or contact us at 367-8002, and we'll put it on a map, create a work order, and we'll get it addressed. Thank you. Regan, are you going to say a few words?
I am.
All right, Regan Smith, our Emergency Operations Manager.
Regan Smith, Emergency Manager, City of Sioux Falls. First off, I'd like to, we've thanked the city folks and a lot of others. I'd like to thank the media. You folks have worked a lot of long hours, are covering big, important information, not only here, but across the state. So I know, I appreciate that, and you're part of the team in sharing that critical information to the public, and we couldn't do it without you. Just a few updates on weather. We did get a 2-day rain report at the airport that was 2.49 inches. The river gauges indicate that that the water is going down. The Big Sioux at Western Avenue went down 3 feet overnight, and Skunk Creek went down 6 feet. So that's good information. I anticipate there at Western Avenue that will be a slower decrease as all of the inflows from the city make their way to the river. The National Weather Service is predicting favorable weather conditions over the next 5 days, slow warming, slow snow melt, no significant rain events are forecasted, and but we do still have that potential for ice dams, which could affect the river and see a rise there. Want to mention all the different agencies that are working together here. It's really a big coordinated effort. Here in Sioux Falls, we've got streets, water rec, engineering, water purification, landfill, environmental, storm damage, police, fire, emergency management, health department, and then the support we get from City Hall, IT, communications, the mayor's office. Working really close with the governor's office. We're on the phone almost hourly with them. The Office of Emergency Management, locating resources and sharing information. The Department of Corrections has provided us some inmates to do some sandbagging for that public infrastructure work that Mark referenced to. The Department of Transportation, working with them on the interstate systems, coordinating those closures and reopening and those things. National Weather Service obviously is our go-to for those weather reports. Metro Communications, they've answered 1,250 calls between Wednesday up to midnight last night. Mid-American Energy working on some response with them. 211 Helpline Center, they're taking calls for us and will be really our lead on that volunteer effort. And then some private entities here in town, businesses, Sioux Cup Construction, Sunbelt Rentals, Construction Signing, Traffic Solutions, TNR Contracting, and Dan's Pallet. So a lot of people doing a lot of hard work out there. And then obviously my counterparts at Minnehaha County and Lincoln County Emergency Management. Just want to talk a little bit about yesterday. We did have Sioux Falls Fire Rescue had 10 water evacuation incidents that involved evacuation, rescue, including stranded vehicles. 36 people were assisted, and 14 of those rescues involved moving water. So again, that's still a threat today, and we're staffed up to deal with it, but hopefully I won't be able to share any of those numbers tomorrow. We won't have those. Area on that update on Rose Lotta, there were 18 address points there that were affected. Sioux Falls Fire and Police Department went door to door asking people for their cooperation in leaving. The evacuation went very smoothly. I think it took us about 2 hours. 17 people were rescued or evacuated, and 32 people chose to stay in place there. The Red Cross of the Dakotas has opened up shelter at their office on 800 Northwest. 6 persons stayed there overnight. And this shelter it will remain open for those that are displaced by the flood. The park department, that we continue to ask people to stay out of the flooded parks and bike trails and stay away from those fast-moving waters. As those water levels decrease or drop, parks will work to clean up that debris in those parks and in those systems. Just a list of those at the time, the parks that are closed: Legacy, Dunham, Sertoma, Yankton Trail, Tomar, Spencer, Lower Tuthill, Pasley, Norland, Rotary, Riverdale, Cherry Rock, River Boulevard Greenway, Beetle Greenway, Nelson Greenway, and Great Bear. We'll tweet that out later so you don't have to go through my voice after there. And again, the bike trail system, those parks are impacted, so we ask people to respect those barricades for their own safety. The Cali Branch Library remains closed for today. We'll monitor that, and once the roads are open there, we'll open that up. But that library staff did do some mitigation yesterday, just in case there were further impacts. They moved some books and materials within the building in case they would have had flooding there. Finally, we didn't have any issues reported by water purification or light and power. No reported impacts to local hospitals. The zoo didn't have major impacts to their operation, and the airport reported they only had minor impacts due to standing water, but all runways remained open throughout the flooding issues. With that, I think we'd open it up for, I'm sorry, I'll invite Jason Gearman, Minnehaha County Emergency Management.
Hello, Jason Gearman, Minnehaha County Emergency Management. I'll talk specifically about kind of what's going on in the county. Most of the water has subsided and most of the roads are open. The townships are requesting that you stay off their roads. There's multiple issues here with the frost coming out of the road, and then the flooding is causing a lot of damage. And they just request that you stay off them unless you're a resident and have to travel them. We're looking ahead right now, and specifically in the Renner area, the spring thaw coming. Obviously, we're looking at the river situation and monitoring that continuously as far as flooding when it starts to warm up. One thing I do want to mention as far as the 211, it is not specifically meant for city residents of Sioux Falls. I've spoken with the 211 representative, and anybody from the county can call and use that service, donate to it, or request a service. And they are looking for volunteers, and it doesn't matter if you're from Del Rapids, Hartford, Brandon, wherever. I'm sure they would appreciate anything that you can donate or help out with. If there's anything specific to Minnehaha County for questions, I can address them now.
Are they looking for clothing articles, or what kind of articles are the homeowners needing?
Well, that's going to be determined by each individual homeowner. Some might just need labor help to remove items. We haven't had a lot of requests for clothing that I'm aware of. So,
how many water rescues have you guys had out in the county?
Well, we kind of combined them with the city because a lot of the rescues that are volunteer group were kind of assisting with the city. They were involved in the ones on West 12th, and then there was a rescue on Maple by Ellis Road where somebody was trapped in a car with rapidly moving water. And again, those are all volunteers too, and we're always looking for volunteers for the rescue squad. It's a great group of people that really provide an excellent service to the community.
Have you had any infrastructure damage, like to, I don't know, public buildings or
Nothing
parks
to,
or anything?
nothing to really public buildings or as far as infrastructure to the county, but obviously some parks are going to be affected, you know, along the river. Del Rapids seems to be fine, but, you know, we did have a basement collapse in Baltic the first evening, and I believe there was some damage to a business in Crooks yesterday where there was a building collapse. No injuries, it was unoccupied.
What's the advice for people who are going to Falls Park to look at the water?
Maybe that should be addressed by the city. You know, it's an awesome sight to see right now, but obviously you got to be careful. All right, thank you.
You want me to?
You better address that one.
As I've said for the last couple days, you know, why don't you take a couple of days? We asked the residents to take a few days off from those parks, especially Falls Park. Definitely, if you've got kids, we don't want them down there on their own or unattended. But I would just recommend hold off your visit for a few days, and if you are going to go there, be extremely cautious because with those fast-moving, cold water, if you go in there, the hypothermia, the fast-moving, the debris, it's your chances of survival are not going to be good.
And this is usually the time, like the past couple of years, when people have fallen in and they have died. So, I mean, is that something that you would want to emphasize?
Right, March, April timeframe, or any time of the year really, but with these high historic flows, we just really want people to stay away. There's enough video out there, there's enough pictures, you don't have to see it live. Wait a few days.
Megan, can you go over the numbers of water rescues again? I think I misheard you. So did you say there were 10 water rescues?
We had 10 incidents with that involved evacuation, rescue, or stranded vehicles. We had 36 people that were assisted within those, and with that, there were 14 rescues that involved moving water, where it was actually hazardous.
14?
That was within that 36.
Gotcha.
And I do want to clarify on the, I think I misspoke on the Lotta area. There were 80 address points, not 18.
Oh, I had a
Yeah,
question.
sure.
Have you guys seen much damage to infrastructure in the city? I know that footbridge in Dunham Park did.
You want to address that, Mark? The critical infrastructure damage, you know, other than the Dunham Park Bridge?
Sure. So will you restate the question?
Oh, I was just wondering if there's been any damage to any structures in the city besides that bridge in Dunham Park.
Yeah, so right now that the water's receded, one of the things that we'll do is contractually and to meet our federal bridge inspection program, we inspect half the bridges each year, the other half the next year. So we already have a team on contract, so we're going to actually bring them in and do an inspection of any bridges that had high water, just so we can look at the connection points, the bearing pads, things of that nature. So I don't have any information today if we've got any risks on that. I think everything was generally in good shape with the exception of the pedestrian bridge that we'll start to have a team work on. So how we extract that bridge, inspect that bridge, and ultimately reset that bridge. There will certainly be impacts to infrastructure. It is, you know, they're in the public right of way or near the river system. You know, I know the park system, there's a number of bathrooms that were almost completely underwater. So there's going to be an extensive approach now for the city to go systematically look through anything that received high water and to start to identify what steps we need to take.
So the efforts to replace the bridge, that obviously will probably take weeks, months?
Yes, it's going to take some time. I think first we want to make sure we can get the bridge out of the river channel, and then we'll do a full inspection. If the abutments are sound, it could certainly accelerate the speed of getting that reset. It's a very popular area. Summer's coming, so we want to make sure one of our city's greatest assets is our bike trail system, and so we're going to put a lot of emphasis into getting the debris out, getting that cleaned up, and ultimately getting it addressed.
You said the restrooms, those are park restrooms that were flooded?
Yes, sorry, that was better. So yeah, if you went down into like Spencer Park yesterday, there was just a number of structures, especially like near the dog park, all those that you could, in some cases, see the tops of the structures as it. If you went into the Riverdale area, that entire Riverdale Park where junior football was, now lacrosse is, there was a number of structures that were almost completely inundated. And that's to be expected because a lot of your greenway has been dedicated to the city because it's in the floodplain. And so in some cases it's for the floodway where the moving water is, and the second thing, it could just be where the static water is, where it kind of inundates the area, and the main channel's got to get drained out before that static water comes out. But you know, to answer your question, has there been damage? There will absolutely have been damage. With this much water is very powerful, but it's going to take us a series of weeks to get an inspection and then ultimately recovered.
You mentioned that one of your biggest efforts today is to clear up Louise Avenue. And so that, I mean, there's been studies done, that's pretty much the most popular intersection, 41st and Louise, in the entire state. And it's also one of the newest streets. So we did have someone ask, if it's one of the newest streets, then why did it get so flooded? Is it just because it's in a low-lying area? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Sure. And so, and I did want to highlight that the team just texted out that West 12th Street just got opened up. So that's why we really want to encourage people to continue to go to the website, that interactive piece. You're going to start to see our roadway systems recover fairly quickly as we can move pumping teams from one to the next. The storm drainage system under the Louise Avenue area is rock solid. It's designed for today's 5-year storm. The limiting factor is as around Louise and 43rd Street, as it collects that stormwater in the intakes, and then it goes into an underground piping system, it heads straight east toward the river. When it got to the river was almost at the top of levee. And so what we have to do in a non-normal situation like this is we have to go to the low point on the one side of the levee and pump it over. And so the storm drainage system in itself is rock solid. It's the outlet condition. And you know, in many cases, you don't have the same timing. You don't have the river running at its high peak and then you have a localized storm. In a situation like this where we had it, we've got to actually go out there and help that water get it over the levee and into the river channel. So I would expect that we'll have Louise Avenue open today. It's that area on near 43rd and Western is we're starting to recover it really quickly. And so we'll get out there, we'll get blades out there to blade off any ice, de-ice the pavement, and get another critical road open.
Going off of that, why did we see flooding get worse a little bit throughout the day in some areas? Like they had to close off a portion of 229 this morning. So what caused the water to keep going even though you guys were pumping in areas?
Right, so there's just so much water and it starts to move from point A to point B. And that's essentially what happened is the river really continued to rise through almost supper time. And so we were expecting it to crest around 1 o'clock. That was some of the initial projections, but so we didn't make a lot of ground in some of our pumping areas. We were probably just maintaining. And then as that water starts to move, that's why late in the day you started to see as flows continue to increase on Skunk Creek as they dump into the Big Sioux River, it starts to further inundate more land, and that's why 229 was impacted later in the day because it's farthest away from the channel. It just, water's a very powerful piece. You gotta very much respect it, and you also have to be very patient with it. And so that's what we've done, and this is a very unique event.
Regan, did you guys see the video of someone, you guys were called out for a water rescue at Dunham Park yesterday? I can't remember, it was in the afternoon sometime.
Yes.
Then you guys ended up calling it off, and there was a video that surfaced that a user posted, and supposedly it was him jumping into the water. number one, how did you guys feel about seeing that video of that person? And number two, do you guys foresee any charges being pressed against that individual?
I'm not sure if we ever made contact with the individual. We did make contact, Sioux Falls Fire and Police, and clarified that there wasn't anybody yet in the water. But obviously, a lot of resources were deployed there and expended there. And so, yeah, but we do have to respond to all of those calls, whether they're the real thing or, and people, the public, if they view something, they're going to call it in. And, whether it's somebody playing around or the real thing, and we're gonna have to respond. Obviously, we don't want that, and that's what we've been talking about for several days here, is definitely stay away. Don't purposely enter the waterway. That's really ridiculous.
Do we know whether or not that actually was the person?
I have no idea if that video was actually the one called in. It's pretty tough when we're getting a lot of calls like that, whether that is the person or not. I have no idea about the timing of that video or when that was put on or taken.
Okay, the people that, or the gentleman that you guys did rescue, come in contact with, that stated that he went swimming, were there gonna be any charges pressed against that person, and whether or not they will be billed for the services that had to go? The agencies?
I don't know. The police department, I don't know. They'll have that in their incident report, and they'll have to investigate and determine whether there are charges.
That's one of the things that we were being questioned on.
Mm-hmm.
That plus the motorists that were going around the barricades, that some of them actually did get stuck in the water.
Right. There are provisions. We typically haven't enforced those.
Okay.
So this isn't, over. You've still got a lot of work to do today, but, you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. How does this compare to other storms that the city has undergone, particularly the ice storm? Can you compare them?
Every incident's different. Even every single flood is different. Also, just the timing, the inflows, how it was caused, whether it's spring runoff, summer, that type of thing. But obviously, this has impacted many homeowners, all of our residents in terms of our traffic system and that type of thing. So this is a very significant incident for the city of Sioux Falls.
This might be a question for Mark. A lot of people have been asking about sandbags. I know we went over this yesterday and it might be a little too late now, but can you just kind of reiterate why the city does not provide sandbags to residents, and would there ever be a situation that you guys would provide sandbags?
Well, I think I can, let's first start talking about this event. So this is a very short, impactful event, and we've got to make sure we preserve the sandbag inventory so we can protect public infrastructure. We have over 20 wastewater lift stations. At any given time, we could get a work order that says, go sandbag that one. And so we've got to make sure that we're agile enough, because those wastewater lift stations collectively protect about 55,000 customers or homes and businesses. And so we're looking at the macro piece of that. The second thing is if we have time. So normally if we have a large queue of water coming down the Big Sioux River, say it starts at Watertown, we start to see the river gauging stations increasing, and we start getting notified that we are going to have a large queue of water. We're going to have at least a week plus to ramp up. We're going to first then concentrate on those neighborhoods that are in the FEMA flood plain area. Because over the last 25 years, FEMA's updated their models and have, over time, put certain neighborhoods into the floodplain. One is the Lotta area that's just east of Minnesota Avenue. If we had a week plus time, that would take hundreds of thousands of sandbags and a large operation, probably something that we would team up with the state to deploy. In this case, you've got literally hours, and so you just have very small time to organize any effort and you're in really a kind of a triage mode. I know that there is some perspective on back in '97 when there was a long lead time of when flows were coming to the city, and then there's potential that you can issue like 20 bags to a certain resident and you set up a full distribution center. But when you only have essentially, literally hours, in this case a day, we've got to first focus on the public's infrastructure because we're protecting so many customers. And so, I know that there is some county operations that have done that. But in this particular case, we've got to actually preserve those quantities so we can make sure we maintain our own needs. Does that make sense? Okay.
I thought of something. Since the city has been in contact with Governor Nell's office, is the damage bad enough that she would come and check it out, visit, if that's a discussion at all?
TJ, do you want to address that? I'll have TJ Nelson, the Deputy Chief of Staff, address that.
Yes, we've been in contact with the governor's office, and she is planning a visit to Sioux Falls. Still ironing out the details for that, but she's got a draft declaration ready for when we need to. But we, the moisture's over, or the precipitation's over. We're in that recovery mode. So as we add up those costs and recovery efforts, that's when the state will be critical in our recovery.